U.S. Office of Personnel Management hack was accomplished through months of planning by a suspected Unit 61398, a part of China's infamous cybersecurity espionage division. During this attack, creative use of programming, hardware, and software was implemented not only to infiltrate the OPM, but to defend it once the intrusion had been detected. The first aspect of programming utilized by the hackers was the creation of malware integral to the attack disguised as a dynamic link library, which is normally standard in McAfee products. A dynamic link library is simply a collection of code and data that can be used by more than one program at once. The file, called mqtil.dll, looked very out of place on the OPM systems because they do not use any McAfee products. Not long after its discovery, mqtil.dll was found to be hiding a tool allowing the hackers to access a massive amount of data. The extent of the cyber attack was deemed too severe for the OPM security team alone, and engineers from the U.S. Computer Readiness Team, a part of Homeland Security, were dispatched. After arriving at the OPM's offices, they set up their own network by carrying in hardware brought specifically for this purpose. Computers and servers were configured in a windowless sub-basement. The purpose of this separate network was to ensure security with a customized firewall. This group of engineers immediately went to work investigating the DLL and what it was trying to cover up. Eventually, the Homeland Security team discovered a piece of software they were familiar with. The malware attached to mqtil.dll was a derivative of a remote access tool called PlugX. This software is known to be used by Chinese-speaking hackers and enemies of the Chinese government in different forms. Once PlugX had allowed remote access to the OPM systems, the attackers compressed immense amount of sensitive information into RAR and zip files to efficiently and inconspicuously transfer the data. Some of the information stolen ranges from the personnel files of 4.2 million employees to 5.6 million digital images of government employee fingerprints. By April 21, 2015, the engineers had found over 2,000 instances of malicious software, but realized the PlugX tool only existed on 10 OPM devices. The problem was that the malware had infected a piece of hardware critical to the OPM's network, a server called the jump box. Once this administrative server had been infected, the hackers could manipulate the network any way they desired.
So, how did this happen? Why is one of the world's superpowers so negligent in national security? You would think that having a database and network that stores millions of federal employees' personally identifiable information, including information on their families and friends, security would be of utmost importance. I mean, it's a $4.5 billion program. That must mean it will protect us, right?
Absolutely. Wrong.
Unfortunately, some terrible security techniques were used that enabled hackers to utilize stolen passwords to deploy the malware. Instead of working defensively and preemptively to prevent such attacks, many tactics were not even implemented until afterwards. For example, they're just now requiring two-factor authentication to log into their computers, meaning they would need to use something like a CAC card, a common access card, as well as a password. This is absolutely appalling because the DoD required changing passwords about every 3 months, with very ridiculous stipulations. You pretty much had to smash your face on the keyboard repeatedly to get a password that was random enough. Most of the time, you just had to reset your password every time you wanted to log in and go through 9 million security questions. Okay, maybe a little dramatic, but it was tedious. So if the federal government workers are required to follow strict guidelines and go through yearly training, why aren't the people who are supposed to protect the information also required to do these things, as well as much more? Employees were using their personal email on the government computers, which opens up the entire network to attacks. People are much more lax with their personal email and may unwittingly infect the network. With so much cyber terrorism and the increase in invisible attacks, security needs to be a priority. I think everyone would agree with what the Director of Information Security Issues at the U.S. Government Accountability Office said when asked what he would grade the federal security apparatus. He gave it a D, but hey, I guess it's still passing.